The room erupted in laughter before I could even set my purse down. My father lifted his champagne glass toward a cluster of guests from my brother's fiancé's family and smiled like he was delivering the perfect joke. "Oh, and this is my other daughter." He motioned toward me without even saying my name. "She stocks shelves for a living." A few people chuckled politely. My mother slipped her arm through his and added, "Every family has one." More laughter. I smiled because I had learned years ago that arguing only gave them another reason to mock me. My brother, Daniel, glanced at me for barely a second before returning to his guests. He didn't laugh, but he didn't stop them either. I had expected this. I just hadn't expected what happened next. Across the room, the bride's mother slowly lowered her wineglass. Her smile disappeared. She wasn't looking at my face. She was staring at my right hand, at the thick, pale burn scar that stretched from my wrist across my fingers. She looked at it once, then again. Her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. Without saying a word, she stood. Every conversation around us gradually faded. She walked directly toward me while my parents continued smiling, completely unaware that anything had changed. When she finally stopped in front of me, her voice was barely above a whisper. "May I speak with you privately?" The room fell silent. My father laughed awkwardly. "Careful," he joked. "She'll probably ask you for career advice." Nobody else laughed. The woman's eyes never left mine. She ignored him completely. I looked from her to my scar, wondering if I'd somehow met her before. Nothing came to mind. Of course," I finally answered. As I followed her toward the patio doors, my mother leaned close enough that only I could hear. "Please don't embarrass us." Those words shouldn't have hurt anymore. I'd heard versions of them my entire life. Don't say too much. Don't make a scene. Don't draw attention. Don't make your brother uncomfortable. Don't remind people you could have done more with your life. By 31, I'd become an expert at shrinking myself. Working as an inventory supervisor at a neighborhood grocery store wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. I paid my bills. I showed up on time. My employees trusted me. Customers knew me by name. To my parents, none of that mattered. All they saw was the daughter who never became someone impressive enough to brag about. Daniel, meanwhile, was the family's golden child. Corporate attorney. Luxury condo. Designer suit. Tonight's engagement party looked less like a family celebration and more like an exhibition of everything my parents believed success should look like. Crystal chandeliers reflected off polished marble floors. Servers carried silver trays through conversations about investment portfolios, vacation homes, and business acquisitions. Every introduction my parents made sounded the same. "This is our son. Our future daughter-in-law. Our family's pride." Then there was me. The other daughter. The one they always explained instead of celebrated. Outside, the evening air felt cool against my face. The bride's mother waited until the patio door closed behind us before turning back toward me. For several long seconds, she simply looked at my scar again. Then she asked quietly, "Were you ever working at the Harbor View Hotel?" The question stole the breath from my lungs. I hadn't heard that name in years. And suddenly, memories I'd spent a decade trying to bury came rushing back all at once. I stared at her. The Harbor View Hotel. I hadn't spoken those 4 words aloud in nearly 10 years. "Yes," I answered carefully. "I worked there." Her eyes immediately filled with tears. "I knew it," she whispered. I instinctively looked back through the patio doors. Inside, guests laughed around polished tables while servers carried trays between them. From out there, it looked like a perfect celebration. Out here, everything felt different. "I was in the executive kitchen," I said quietly. "Before." I couldn't finish the sentence. She nodded as if she already knew. You wanted to become a chef. I blinked. How do you know that? Instead of answering, she gently reached toward my right hand. May I? I nodded. Her fingertips hovered over the scar, but never touched it. I've never forgotten this. I swallowed hard. Most people notice the scar for a second before politely looking away. She was looking at it like she'd seen it before. I don't understand, I admitted. She drew a slow breath. Were you ever properly thanked? The question caught me completely off guard. I gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. Not really. She closed her eyes for a moment. Oh. When she opened them again, they were glistening. I'm so sorry. I shook my head. It was a long time ago. She studied my face. No, she said softly. Some things are never just a long time ago. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The music from inside drifted through the open windows, mixing with the evening breeze. Finally, I broke the silence. I left the hotel after everything happened. I know. My hand never healed well enough. She nodded again. I know. I couldn't keep working in a professional kitchen. I know. Every answer she gave only created another question. I took a cautious step closer. Have we met before? She smiled sadly. Not exactly. Before I could ask anything else, voices spilled onto the patio. There you are. My father's cheerful tone instantly shattered the moment. He walked toward us carrying another drink, wearing the same confident smile he'd worn all evening. We're about to start the engagement toast. When neither of us answered, he laughed. I hope my daughter hasn't been telling you dramatic stories. He looked at me. Melanie has always had a habit of making ordinary things sound bigger than they were. I opened my mouth, but the bride's mother spoke first. She hasn't told me anything. Her voice was calm. Very calm. Too calm. Dad either didn't notice or chose not to. Good, he chuckled. Sometimes she likes attention. Inside the ballroom, several guests glanced toward us. My mother appeared beside the doorway. Richard, she called. Everyone's waiting. Dad gestured toward the ballroom. Come on, let's not keep our guests. The bride's mother didn't move. Instead, she looked directly into my eyes. So, she said quietly enough that only I could hear. You truly don't know what you did for my family, do you? Every hair on my arm stood up. Before I could answer, she turned and walked back inside, leaving me frozen on the patio, wondering what part of my past had just walked back into my life. The applause began before I even reached my chair. Daniel stood beside his fiancée with one arm around her waist, while guests raised their glasses. My father stepped forward to deliver the first toast. If you'll all give me just a minute, he announced proudly. Tonight is about celebrating two exceptional families. Smiles spread across the room. He praised Daniel's career. He praised the bride. He praised both families' accomplishments. Then, almost as an afterthought, his eyes landed on me. And yes, he said with a grin, before anyone asks, Melanie is doing well enough. She still stocks shelves. Honest work, I suppose. We can't all be overachievers. A few nervous laughs drifted through the ballroom. My mother smiled into her wineglass. I keep telling her she should have aimed higher. I looked down at my plate. The words barely registered anymore. Years of hearing them had worn grooves into my heart. Then a calm voice cut through the room. May I ask a question? Every head turned toward the bride's mother. She remained seated, her gaze fixed on my parents. Do all of you know how Melanie got that burn scar? Silence. My father chuckled. Oh, that. He waved dismissively. She was always a little careless. My mother nodded. She had an accident years ago, nothing more. The bride's mother's expression hardened. No. Her single word landed heavier than any shout. That isn't what happened. The ballroom became so quiet that the soft music from the string quartet suddenly seemed impossibly loud. My father frowned. "I'm sorry." "I said," she repeated, "that is not what happened." She slowly stood. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. She looked around the room before continuing. "Many years ago, there was a terrible fire." Several guests leaned forward. "It happened so quickly that dozens of people had no chance to escape." She paused. "One young woman made a decision that changed countless lives." My pulse quickened. I knew exactly which night she was talking about. I also knew where the story ended. Or at least I thought I did. She continued. "That young woman entered the building after everyone else was running out." Gasps rippled across nearby tables. "But I'm not going to tell you her name." She looked directly at my father. Instead, she asked quietly, "Why would you spend years pretending your own daughter has nothing to be proud of?" The color drained from my father's face. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. My mother suddenly looked anywhere except at the bride's mother. Across the room, Daniel lowered his champagne glass. For the first time all evening, he wasn't watching his guests. He was watching our parents. The atmosphere shifted. The engagement party was no longer a celebration. It had become a room full of people waiting for someone to tell the truth. The bride's mother reached for her daughter. "Emily," she said gently, "would you please bring the leather folder from my car?" Emily looked confused. "The brown one?" "Yes. The one you've kept all these years." Her mother nodded. "Please." Without another word, Emily hurried toward the entrance. Every pair of eyes followed her. Nobody knew what was inside that folder. But somehow, everyone understood it was about to change everything. Emily returned less than 2 minutes later. She held a worn brown leather folder against her chest with both hands, as though it contained something fragile. The chatter that usually filled celebrations had vanished. No glasses clinked. No one reached for the buffet. Even the musicians had quietly stopped playing. Emily handed the folder to her mother. "I still don't understand," she admitted. "You will." The bride's mother rested the folder on the table and carefully loosened the faded leather strap. Inside were yellowed newspaper clippings, photographs, insurance reports, and several sealed documents protected in clear plastic sleeves. A guest near me whispered, "She's kept all of that." "For years," another answered. The bride's mother nodded. "For almost 10 years." She lifted the first newspaper clipping. The hotel fire made local headlines for weeks. Several guests leaned closer. She didn't pass the article around. Instead, she removed an old photograph. The image showed firefighters surrounding the Harbor View Hotel while smoke poured from shattered kitchen windows. Another photograph followed. Then another. Finally, she stopped at one particular picture. It was taken just after the last rescue. She turned it so everyone around the table could see. Most of the face in the photograph was hidden beneath soot and an emergency blanket. But one detail stood out immediately. A fresh burn stretched across the young woman's right hand. Exactly where mine was now. Soft murmurs spread through the room. The bride's mother looked directly at me. "I searched for this young woman for years." I lowered my eyes. "I never wanted to be found." "I know." She smiled sadly. "You disappeared before reporters arrived." She removed another document. The hotel management offered recognition. Another. There were interviews. Another. There was financial compensation. She looked around the room. Every offer was declined. Someone at the next table frowned. "Why?" Before I could answer, she did. "Because," she said, "saving people wasn't something she wanted applause for." Several guests slowly turned toward me. Their expressions had changed completely. No one was seeing the grocery store supervisor anymore. They were trying to reconcile the quiet woman sitting before them with the stranger in the photographs. I shifted uncomfortably. I wasn't trying to be a hero. You never claimed to be. She gave me a grateful smile. That's exactly why I never stopped looking. She picked up another photograph. This one showed firefighters carrying survivors toward waiting ambulances. You walked away before anyone even knew your name. I nodded. I didn't think my name mattered. The bride's mother looked toward my parents. It mattered to me. Silence. She turned another page. I promised myself that if I ever found her. Her voice caught. I would thank her properly. My father suddenly cleared his throat. This has all been very touching, but... She cut him off with a calm look. Richard. He froze. She held his gaze for several long seconds. Didn't your family know what Melanie did? My father stared at the table. Nobody rescued him. Nobody answered for him. Even my mother remained perfectly still. The silence itself became the answer. A quiet gasp escaped someone across the room. Daniel slowly looked from our parents to me. His face carried something I'd never seen before. Not pity. Not embarrassment. Confusion. As if everything he'd believed about our family had suddenly stopped making sense. The bride's mother reached into the folder one final time. She removed a sealed document and carefully broke the envelope open. Holding it in both hands, she looked at me before addressing the room. This report explains what happened. She paused. After Melanie walked back into that burning kitchen, every eye locked onto the pages in her hands. No one breathed. The room remained silent as the bride's mother unfolded the final document. I've read this report more times than I can count, she said quietly, because every time I wondered why I was still alive, it reminded me. She looked around the ballroom. Tonight, everyone deserves to know the truth. She took a slow breath. The fire began in the hotel kitchen just after dinner service. A grease fire spread into the ventilation system. Within minutes, smoke filled the employee corridors. Several guests exchanged uneasy glances. I was trapped in the pastry office with 2 junior cooks. The emergency exit behind us had already collapsed. She looked at me. The firefighters hadn't reached us yet. My stomach tightened. I remembered every second. The screaming. The heat. The alarms. The impossible decision to turn around instead of running outside. I was already in the parking lot, I said quietly. Heads turned toward me. I had made it out. The bride's mother nodded. Yes. She held up the report. The security investigation confirmed that. She continued reading. Employee Melanie Carter voluntarily re-entered the building after learning multiple staff members remained trapped beyond the East Kitchen corridor. Several guests looked at me with open disbelief. Against repeated instructions to evacuate, Ms. Carter assisted 3 employees through the service hallway before returning a second time. I lowered my eyes. I had never wanted those words read aloud. The bride's mother closed the report for a moment. The second trip is why I'm alive. No one spoke. She continued. When Melanie reached us, she wrapped her jacket around my daughter and ordered another employee to cover my face. Emily's eyes widened. You protected me too. I smiled faintly. You were only 14. Emily covered her mouth. I don't remember your face. There was too much smoke. The bride's mother nodded. Then Melanie lifted a burning metal storage rack that had fallen across the doorway. I instinctively rubbed my scar. It slipped. She gently reached for my hand. It didn't slip. It collapsed. The room watched in complete silence. The steel landed across her hand. I remembered the pain. Not because it burned. because I realized, in that instant, I might never cook professionally again. Still, the doorway had opened. Everyone behind me got out. The bride's mother wiped away a tear. The investigation concluded that her actions prevented multiple fatalities. She folded the report shut. Without her, she looked at Emily. I would never have watched my daughter grow up. Emily crossed the room and wrapped her arms around me. Thank you, she whispered through tears, for giving me my mother. I stood frozen. No one had ever thanked me like that. Not once. Across the room, Daniel slowly turned toward our parents. His voice was barely recognizable. You knew. Neither of them answered. You both knew. My mother stared at the floor. My father tried to clear his throat. It wasn't something we wanted her living in the past over. Daniel blinked. What? Dad shifted uncomfortably. Her career was already over. We thought constantly talking about the fire would stop her from moving on. I looked at him. No. Everyone turned toward me. You didn't stop talking about it. I shook my head. You erased it. The words landed harder than any accusation. You told people I quit because I couldn't handle pressure. Silence. You told relatives I wasn't ambitious. More silence. You laughed every time someone asked why I worked at a grocery store. I looked directly at both of them. You knew exactly why. Neither could deny it. Several relatives slowly stepped away from my parents. The distance was small. Emotionally, it was enormous. Daniel removed the microphone from its stand. I owe my sister an apology. He faced every guest. My entire life, I believed she simply gave up on her dream. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I never asked why. I walked over and hugged him. I should have told you. He shook his head. No. He glanced toward our parents. They should have. The engagement dinner ended long before dessert. No one felt like celebrating after discovering that the family's favorite story had been built on a lie. Over the following weeks, relatives stopped repeating the jokes my parents had spent years telling. Instead, they asked me about the hotel, about the people who survived, about the career I lost. For the first time, they wanted the truth. The bride's family invited me to every wedding event that followed. Not out of obligation, out of gratitude. Emily asked me to sit in the front row during the ceremony because, as she told everyone with a smile, my mom wouldn't be here without Melanie. At work, my regional manager learned about the rescue after a guest from the engagement party happened to be one of our longtime customers. A few months later, I accepted a promotion overseeing inventory operations for multiple stores. It wasn't because of the fire. It was because people finally saw the same leadership I'd quietly carried for years. As for my parents, people no longer admired the image they had carefully built. They remembered the night they publicly called their bravest daughter the family disappointment. Some reputations recover. That one never did. I still look at the scar on my right hand every morning. For years, I saw everything it had taken from me. Now I see something different. It reminds me that the people who tried hardest to erase my story never had the power to change the truth. The scar my parents pretended not to understand became the proof that the daughter they called the family's disappointment had always been the one worth remembering.